Hi everyone, I'm back, and today's video I'm gonna try and answer a couple of questions that I've been getting from some of my friends. And one of the first questions that I often get asked is, what is ear training? Because a lot of people don't really know what it is, even musicians. So I'm gonna try my best to explain exactly what it is. So here it goes. Ear training is something that we've been doing since the time we were born, believe it or not. And one of our first lessons was hearing our mom and dad say things to us. And often those words were mama or dada. And we would hear them over and over and over again, to the point where we start realizing, even as a baby, that those sounds were not just these random sounds. They actually had a meaning. And it's, for some reason, we were smart enough to realize that those sounds had an association with the person who was saying them. So we were able to identify mama or dada with the person that was caring for us. And as we got older, we not only knew that certain sounds meant certain things and had certain emotions with them, but we also started to try and replicate those words using our voice. And that's one of the coolest things about ear training, is that you hear something and you try and replicate it. As we get older, we start learning our first writing skills. We learn our ABCs. What does an A sound like? What does a B sound like? And then we also start being taught that certain letters put together make certain sounds. And when we hear those words, we try and write those sounds out using those letters. Those words are often found together with these other words. We find them over and over in English, and they just form these patterns. And when we get to school, we also learn about sentence structure, and our teacher will make us do our first dictation. She'll say a sentence and we have to write it out. And of course, along the way, we're terrible at it. We have lots of spelling mistakes, but that's okay because it's part of the learning process. And the more we do it, the better and faster we get at it. And then the sentences, eventually, as we get older, the sentences are getting longer, so long that they become a paragraph, and the paragraphs get so long that they become chapters and novels and scripts and film plays. And it's exactly the same thing with music. And nobody knows this. Music is exactly like learning a language. It really is no different. And the only thing that we're doing, instead of words, we're trying to train our brains to hear pitches and the distance between pitches. So our first lesson is trying to identify what high notes sound like and what a low note sound like and what a middle note sound like. And once we've gotten that down, we start with, okay, so now I understand what those sound like. So what's the difference between this pitch and this pitch, or in this pitch and this pitch? And we want to try and give this distance between two different pitches. We're trying to label that distance, and we're training our brains to hear the difference between something that's this far away from each other or this far away from each other. And they get closer and closer and more complicated. Once we've mastered that, then we're getting into multiple pitches. Maybe we have 4. And we're training our brains to hear 4 pitches at the same time. And those are called chords. So we want to be able to hear a chord and just be able to write it. Just like we want to be able to hear a word and just be able to write it. Ear training gets more and more complicated, and you start getting into orchestra scores and movements, and you get more notes, and sometimes it doesn't even sound like music, but those pitches are there. And I can tell you, once you get to a certain level, you're hearing pitches in nature. You're hearing chords in car engines. It's really cool. And just having that awareness as a musician, it's the best, it's the most amazing, liberating experience, and also just being able to know that the possibilities are not just limited to your instrument. There's music everywhere. The other question that I get asked, and this is mostly from people who play music, is why do musicians need to have ear training, and why do they have to have theory? Because isn't music just about the playing? And that's a valid point. I mean, I'm all for just playing music, because that's why what we do is, the whole point of music is to play and to express how we feel. And it's not just about the writing, and it's not just about the ear training. But you can also say that we don't need to be able to read and write English. We can get by just fine during the day just with verbal communication. But we would be illiterate. And it's exactly the same thing with music. If you can play music, that's a really great start, but the freedom that you get from knowing how to read notes and being able to train your mind to hear pitches accurately, you guys get this incredible independence from it, and knowing also how to map out your song. I once had a singer-songwriter come to me for help, and she was a really, really talented singer, and the only problem that she was having, what really frustrated her, was she would write the lyrics, and then she would go to her producer and she would write the music part with him playing the chords. She didn't know how to communicate, but she would just hum along, and he would try and interpret what she was singing. And she would just say, okay, no, I don't really like that, or I kind of like that, or I don't like this. And she was telling me how frustrating it was for her to not be able to communicate exactly what it was that she was hearing in her head. If she had had this basic, even just a basic training in theory and ear training, her music probably would have sounded way different. But, you know, unfortunately, she had to compromise at some point. So this is what I want to help you try and avoid. If you were frustrated with, you know, your lack of ability to map things out exactly how you hear them in your head, that's where I want to help, because I know how it's affected my life and how wonderful it is to be able to write for a big band if I want, and tell musicians exactly how I want something to sound, and there's no time wasted trying to get someone to interpret accurately what I'm trying to get across. So I hope that really answered the questions. Feel free to post comments and ask me more questions. I'm more than happy to help answer them. I'm going to be posting more lessons up periodically during the week, and I hope that if you do decide to take these lessons, that you just do them periodically, maybe every second day for 10-15 minutes a day, and not leave them till Saturday or Sunday and cram for 4 hours. It doesn't work that way. So please, whatever you do, if you do these lessons, just do them in snippets. And I will see you in the next video.